I've been here my entire career, going on 43 years. But when I moved to this location, I really didn't know many people, but they're extremely friendly. That's one of the things you'll find in a ranching rural community is that people are very friendly and they're very outgoing, and so it was easy to get to know the ranchers. I've never had any trouble interacting with the ranchers and landowners, and if you understand the ranching culture, you're accepted even quicker. I had a rural background, so I think I understood that ranching culture pretty well. So I was readily accepted, and haven't, in my opinion, or haven't realized it, I don't think I've had any problem at all getting along with ranchers. And it's a good place to work because it's an area where there's a lot of diversity. This is mid-grass country. We have a good mixture, a good biodiversity of plants under good managed systems that really contribute to the welfare of the livestock and the wildlife that we find on this landscape. On our deeper soils that are derived from Buddha limestone, then mesquite can dominate, and it has a lot of thorns on it. It has a lot of chemicals in it that makes it extremely unpalatable, and animals will eat very little of it. Our location is kind of in the southwestern part of the Edwards Plateau, which is a little more arid and drier than the eastern part of the Edwards Plateau. We average about 22 inches of precipitation a year, but it's highly variable. It can range from 6 inches to up to 40 inches of rainfall, and there's no way to know ahead of time. Ranchers in this location have traditionally run mixtures of animals. It's not uncommon to find ranchers that run cattle, sheep, and goats, and have wildlife enterprises along with that. And so that makes it interesting. To me, rainfall, grazing, and fire and drought, all those things go together in your management, and there's something that's happened for thousands of years here on this landscape, and to try to eliminate one of them is impossible. When I first came here, I was a very inexperienced, naive graduate student, and it happened to be in the decade of the 70s, which was represented, that 10-year period was represented by almost every year being above average precipitation. So my first 10 years of experience here on the experiment station I felt like that every time we needed it to rain, we got it. It was amazing. And I didn't understand at that time that was very unusual circumstances. And so those first years of experience I had were not representative of what actually happens here most of the time. Ever since then, we've had periodic droughts, and it's been more typical of the kind of climate we had. We had a lot more ranchers that I would classify as commercial type ranchers. They were making their living off the land, and they were stocking heavier than what you see today. I see today lower stocking rates than what I saw when I first came here. I see more absentee landowners today than when I first came. I see more people buying land for recreational purposes, and there's some landowners that don't have any livestock at all, which I think is very unfortunate, because to me, livestock are needed to help you implement your burning program, and they also can be used to manage the vegetation. I thought the real key to solving most of the ranchers' problems was to understand range nutrition. So when I did my college work, especially my PhD, I tried to become a range nutritionist where I understand the nutritional value of the different plants that grew here, and I felt that was very important. What I didn't recognize early on was the effect that juniper had on the carrying capacity of this rangeland, and as the years went by, the juniper continued to increase. A lot of our early research, we were trying to determine the dietary habits of the different animal species here. So we looked at the grazing habits of cattle and the foraging habits of goats and sheep and white-tailed deer. And what we were trying to do was come up with optimal mixtures of animals based on the vegetative composition. That was very valuable information and gave us some insight into how to do a better job of managing the livestock as well as the wildlife. But to me, the big breakthrough has been the understanding and appreciation for the value of prescribed fire. And when I first came here, we weren't involved in a burning management program. Over the years, I saw the juniper increase and start to have a negative effect on the carrying capacity, and realized that we needed to do something about that. If you allow a lot of these volatile fuels to build up, like the cedar, then when you do have a wildfire, it'll be a catastrophic fire. Ghosts, when they're properly managed, can, in combination with prescribed fire, can literally solve the juniper problem. If you allow juniper to dominate the landscape and get a 40 or 50% canopy cover of cedar, it may cost $150 to $200 an acre to mechanically remove that cedar. Whereas if you were using prescribed fire and goats, you wouldn't have that big capital investment. And really the productivity of this land is so low, you can't justify that kind of capital investment in this land. You need to use cost-effective methods to manage the vegetation, and that is one prime way to do it, is with prescribed fire and goats. And we have a lot of people that buy land, that buy it for recreational purposes, and then realize they need to do something. And so even some of those people are coming around. And we did one prescribed burn in 1970 here, and I participated on that burn. And when we first started burning here, we were burning under what is considered the 80-20-20 rule. And that is where you don't burn if the temperature is over 80 degrees Fahrenheit, or the relative humidity less than 20%, or the wind speeds greater than 20 miles an hour. We burned in the wintertime under very mild, cool conditions, and the fire did no good at all. And so I almost came away with the idea that fire didn't even have a place in this landscape, which is pretty incredible compared to how I feel today. Some of our early burns, we were burning under those conditions and not getting the effects we wanted. So more and more we started shifted into hotter temperatures, lower humidities, and started realizing right away that those burns were actually more capable of meeting the goals and objectives of ranchers than burning under the milder conditions. Then it's going to take one of those high-intensity fires to bring those woody plants and prickly pear to their knees with that initial burn, and then you can follow up with milder burns from then on. The only grass I've killed here on this station has been a Threon species, which is fine with most people. Over time, I realized that if we're going to really be serious about burning, the ranchers were going to have to do it themselves, and for them to do it themselves, they were going to have to get the confidence, experience, knowledge of actually how to do the burns themselves. In 1997, I came up with the idea of starting a burn association in the Edwards Plateau. And we had a field day here on this experiment station, and we had about 30 ranchers, and we looked at different burn treatments, some that had been done in the summertime, some in the wintertime. At the end of that field day, I asked them if they would be interested in starting a burn association, and they all said yes, and we started the Edwards Plateau Burn Association. You know, more interest in the burning association. It grew from 30 members eventually to about 500 members and covered multiple counties. We've grown enough fuel that a lot of ranchers are expressing an interest in starting up their burning programs again, and I hope to see that that will continue on into the future, well after I'm retired and gone. Well, the burn workshops are extremely important, in my opinion, and maybe one of the more valuable things we've done in this location. But we just had a lot of people that didn't have any knowledge or experience of applying fire to the landscape. And prescribed fire, learning how to do prescribed fire is not rocket science, but it is complicated, and you need to understand the principles of prescribed burning so you can do an effective and safe job of it. And it involves a lot more than just striking a match on a dry day. Today we have a basic workshop that's 2.5 days in length, and then we have an advanced burn workshop. And if you complete that burn workshop and you pass the exam, you've met the educational requirements of the certification program. I think it's important that someone go to both basic and advanced workshops so you get the full amount of training that's necessary to really understand the complexity of applying prescribed fire. We also we have different levels of certification, and we do have what we call a private certified insured prescribed burn manager. They're not exempt from liability, but they have a really good insurance policy now that they can use in their prescribed burning. We have a lot of traditional ranchers now that at one time didn't even know how to mix drip torch fuel, and today they're serving as burn bosses on prescribed fires, and I would put them up against anybody on their knowledge of how to do a burn safely in this part of the world. We have a lot of people that buy land, that buy it for recreational purposes, and then realize they need to do something. And so even some of those people are coming around, and it's encouraging to see them. I teach prescribed burn schools, and we get a lot of those people coming to our burn schools wanting to learn how to burn, or at least get a better understanding of the value of fire. And so that's encouraging. A lot of those people may decide they don't want to burn themselves, but they know enough to go hire a certified burn manager or become a member of a burn association and get the burn association to help them with their burns. Our ability to burn in this county is a function of our safety record. And so we've had a very good success record in prescribed fire. Makes a lot more sense to be proactive and do prescribed burning under controlled conditions so that you know the fire will stay where you want it to. But unfortunately, we still have landowners that buy this property, that come in and try to suppress fire, even some that allow the cedar to dominate the landscape. And so when they do have a big wildfire, they're very upset. And if that wildfire started from a prescribed burn, then the tendency down in this part of the world is to get you a good lawyer and try to get some money out of it, and that's very unfortunate, especially for people that's trying to implement a prescribed fire program and do the right thing and improve the biodiversity and ecosystem on their habitat. When I first came here, there was no fire being applied, basically. And so there was a lot of resistance to fire from the county governments. Even the ranchers were somewhat concerned about the liability of fire. And state agencies were not real supportive of fire. Over time, that has gradually changed, where today there is better acceptance of fire. And we've worked with the county governments, local volunteer fire departments, trying to educate them. And it is starting to be recognized that prescribed burning has a lot of value, and there probably is a little more flexibility and understanding from the county officials and state officials. Ranchers ask questions and they want an answer. And sometimes it's hard to give an answer because that answer is a function of many things: precipitation, vegetative composition, nutrient requirements of the animals, potential disease problems of the animals. So we deal with an extremely complex situation. That's the problem with agricultural research sometimes, especially when we deal with complex ecosystems such as this. There's very complicated, a lot of interactions. Everything's having an effect on each other, and it's very difficult to come up with an answer sometimes. There may be multiple answers, or there may be a situation where you don't know the answer. I try to always be honest, and if I'm asked a question about something, I just admit, well, I'm not sure about that. I will try to search and see if I can find out. When you first start to work for an agency, you're starting off without a lot of experience. And so the key is to identify those individuals that are really knowledgeable about the ecosystem and try to get their insight into it. When I first started to work, I realized I was very naive at that time, and I thought I knew everything at the time, but obviously over time I didn't. The other important thing is to keep up with the science, understand the good science that's being done at the time, and try to keep current with that through reading the journal articles and visiting with extension personnel that are interpreting that science and putting that information out to the landowners and the general public. And also, through the people that have long-term experience with that particular ecosystem, learn those processes that are important. And you've got to be respectful of other people, and you've got to be respectful of the agency's policies, and you can't be a renegade. You can't go against what the agency wants. You may disagree with it, but you can't be a vocal opponent of that. You've got to be nice to people. You've got to be enthusiastic about your job, and you've got to enjoy your job. If you don't enjoy your job, you need to go do something else. But there's no excuse for not getting along with people within your agency, and there's no excuse for not getting along with people outside of your agency. Even if you disagree with them, you need to respect their opinions. I've never met anyone I didn't learn something from, and I still continue to learn things today from people that I don't necessarily totally agree with what they have to say. I would encourage all the young agency people to gain as much experience as they can with prescribed fire and the benefits of it. If you're going to allow your employees to plan prescribed burns for landowners, they need to know how to apply that prescribed burn, and the only way they can do that is actually participate on prescribed burns. The advice I'd give to ranchers and producers would be to keep an open mind, and not everyone is going to have information or knowledge or programs that will be beneficial to your program, but I would still continue to listen to them and try to keep current of the latest techniques. But every rancher has their different goals and objectives. Every rancher has different resources and things you want to do. And so we're all in this together, so to speak. We're passing a fire culture on to the next generation. When they mature and grow up and start operating these ranches, they're not going to have to be convinced of the value of fire. It's a gradual process. It takes a lot of time, but we're getting there. And you just have to be patient and willing to take a long-term approach to it and take a few small steps at first, and then gradually over time you'll eventually be where you want to be. I felt like I've been extremely lucky to have gotten the opportunity to work for the Texas A&M AgriLife Research Station for this number of years. That's a long time to dedicate your career to one location. I don't think it's been a disadvantage at all. It's given me the opportunity, I think, to really learn how the ecosystem works, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. I've been able to do research. I have really a high opinion of research. It gives us new knowledge and new insight into how things operate, and so that's been very beneficial. And this has also been kind of an extension type job. In other words, ranchers feel very close to this experiment station, and they know they can call and contact me and ask questions, and I have a close interaction with ranchers, especially through things like the Burn Association and the burn schools, and it's given me an opportunity to travel throughout the state and teach burn schools and work with ranchers on prescribed fire as well as livestock issues and wildlife issues. It's been beneficial to me to be able to travel to professional meetings like the Society for Range Management in different parts of the state and even different countries, and interact with scientists and resource managers in those areas and find out what their problems are and how they address their problems. And it's been a good place to raise my family. I have 3 sons and a very understanding wife that was willing to live out here 30 miles from town all these years in a remote location. And truth be known, I probably haven't given enough credit to my wife, but she's, it takes a special wife to do that. And it's just been a good life, quite honestly. And I think the ranching life is a good life. Helping get established the Edwards Plateau Prescribed Burning Association and setting up the prescribed burn schools, and then doing research on very intensive summer burns under dry conditions. Those would be accomplishments that I think I'm the most proud of. Mainly, I'd like to be known as someone who gave an honest opinion about how to operate this system, and someone who supported prescribed fire, and someone who understood how the relationship between grazing, browsing, and prescribed fire, and had an appreciation for the landscape and the ranching culture, and someone who wanted to improve all that.